Hello, everybody. Welcome. We hope you've had a lovely summer and welcome to Cooking with Chef Carole as we enter the autumn season. So welcome back, everyone who've been here. My name is Wendy Sachs. I'm on the board of Plant Powered Metro New York. And as I've said, we're very happy to welcome you to this monthly series, Cooking with Chef Carole. We are being presented by Plant Powered Metro New York and co-sponsored by the Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan. So a special welcome to all the members of the JCC and an extra special welcome to all the people who are in the PPMNY Jumpstart. I know it started just a little while ago, so congratulations on your achievements to date. And we hope today's show might provide a little bit more support for the old timers, which many of us are, and for your newcomers, you newcomers who are here for the first time. A little bit about PPMNY. We empower people to achieve better health and overcome chronic disease through a whole food, plant-based approach to nutrition. We offer evidence-based education, resources, and a grassroots network of support to create community and to inspire change. And together, as leaders and organizers and educators, we raise awareness about the dramatic health benefits of plant-based eating, empower individuals like yourselves to make your own lifestyle changes, and lead projects that spark changes in food policy, practice, and food culture. That's what we do. Anyway, general announcements. It's almost October. Autumn's here, and we're seeing the amazing change of season at the local farmers markets. This morning, I was at the Sunday market on the Upper West Side, and there's still plenty of greens and tomatoes, but you're beginning to see some of the hardier greens like Swiss chard and kale. Carole's just showing us some things from her garden, which I'm sure she'll mention, and blackberries and figs and all kinds of apples, of course. Apples and the autumn fruits are being seen around too. And as always, we encourage you to buy locally through your CSA or farmer's market, eat organic, or even more healthy would be regeneratively grown fruits and vegetables, because the quality of the soil makes such a difference for us and also for climate change. Quick announcements. We have a couple of very special events coming up. I don't want to take too much time away from the show, but just to let you know, tomorrow night in New York City, we have an in-person gathering. There's a potluck in downtown Brooklyn. Later in the month, there'll be another in-person potluck in Astoria. And then this weekend, actually, Carole, you'll really appreciate this because our beloved Dr. Barnard, Neil Barnard, is going to be in New York City for an in-person event launching his new book called The Power Foods Revolution. And if you're in the New York area, please come join us. It's a lecture and book signing. And for those of you who don't know Dr. Barnard, he's one of the most esteemed plant-based leaders and advocate for health and climate and animal cruelty issues. And he works a lot with advocacy in Washington, D.C. as well to encourage political change from the top down as we work from the bottom up. Another very special event this month is with Robert Cheek. Robert Cheek has is going to do a class on building muscle on a plant-based diet. He's often referred to as the godfather of vegan bodybuilding, and he's written several award-winning books, and he's a huge contributor to Forks Over Knives and the Center of Nutrition Studies and Vegan Strong and the No Meat Athlete. He's been plant-based for over 28 years and is a bodybuilder. So he'll be talking to us about that. And then one of my favorite events, another special online event called Savoring Health, Smart Eating Strategies for Men. We often find, as many of you are, many women in this movement, but how do we reach the men? And also how do we what are the specific things that specific health problems they often have to deal with? So this 3-part series that is being hosted by our very own and beloved James Spellos, who's online with us now, doing tech behind the scenes. Anyway, Jim will be hosting this with a couple of other of our community chefs and educators, and they'll be covering heart health and sexual wellness and high blood pressure issues. So please come join us for that. And then please go to the website, plannedparentmetro.org, nyc.org, because there are other events on beating breast cancer and a movie night in Harlem and a family dinner with a pediatrician chat available, another cooking demo with Carole and me and Jim, and a shop with the doc in-person walking tour at Union Square Market, also in Manhattan. So please go, please to the website, register for all and any of these events, and we'd love to have you. Finally, please let us know where you're from in the chat. Also, please ask questions in the chat. Carole and I usually allow time during her demo, and if not, we'll try to save a few minutes at the end to answer as many questions as we can. And if you're liking this presentation, please press like on Facebook or YouTube or even LinkedIn if you're watching from there or if you're watching on the replay. So that's it from me. Here's to our show. Carole, what's on the menu today?
Oh my God, Wendy, so many announcements, and I'm so excited. I just have to comment on two things. One, I love that Dr. Barnard is coming to New York to sign his book, and I've always adored him so much, and it was you and Dr. Barnard. Well, his lecture at the JCC when a number of years ago, back in 2018, actually, that I was propelled to change my 35 years of being a vegetarian. And when I listened to Dr. Barnard speak, a light bulb went off in my head, and I'm like, oh, I've got to do this. I've been thinking about this for a long time, but I don't know if I can do it. And it was like, I don't know if I can give up ooey gooey cheese, and I didn't know if I could give up ice cream. But with Dr. Barnard, it was really clear to me that I needed to do this. So that's very exciting. And the other thing I'm going to tell you, Wendy, is that I met and sat next to Robert Cheek here in New Mexico because in August I was at the Veg Fest in Albuquerque, which I've been doing every year since I've been here giving in-person demos. And he was sitting next to me in my booth.
Aw.
And he was so popular, and he has books, and he's really energetic, and he's really muscular and built up and has a lot to say. So that is super great that you all are hosting him, and how lucky is everybody? Like, that's what I think. So those are my comments.
Ahead. Thank you so much. Yep, I remember that night very well with Dr. Barnard. He's changed so many people's lives. Anyone in the New York area, Connecticut to New
Don't
Jersey,
miss it.
yeah, please come. He's really not to be missed, and he'll be live at Symphony Space, right over near us, Carole, on the Upper West Side.
Yes, awesome, awesome, awesome. I wish I could just fly in for it. So let me tell you what's on the menu so we get started, because as usual, I'm trying to do too many things in a short amount of time. So I won't speak fast all the time, but I am, going to go through a lot of things. So maybe grab a pencil and paper to take notes. But we are going to make lentil soup. Why did I choose lentil soup? One, we're going into the fall right now, and it becomes even more soup season. Yes, soup season did occur in the summer, but soup season is really the fall and the winter when you want to stay warm. And there's nothing like making a big batch of soup for the entire week, right? Or a big batch of anything, because we'll talk a little bit about batch cooking later. But I like to have one big thing in the refrigerator so that I'm not having to cook every day I come home from work. So we're going to make lentil soup, and I think it's a good soup to start with. Why? Because lentils, if you are in transition, and I know we have a lot of newbies here, newbies in Jumpstart program, lentils are really easy to digest. If you're one of those people that are just been afraid of beans, and I do encourage you to get over that fear of eating so many beans or lentils, they have the most fiber, and we all need to have 40 grams of fiber a day. And most people only get 10 to 15 grams. So do learn to eat the beans, okay? But if you have you're worried about having gas, you're worried about how to digest, all the little things like lentils, the red lentils, the green lentils, the yellow lentils, the even the white beans are easier to digest than the bigger beans, and the ones that are more hefty, like a pinto bean, are maybe more difficult for some people. So start slowly, and work your way up to those more difficult beans, but hopefully you get them into your diet. So we're making lentil soup. We're also going to make red pepper hummus, and then we're going to make a quick sandwich with that red pepper hummus. And I love hummus, but I like variations on hummus. I do everything from a beet hummus to a red pepper hummus to a sweet potato hummus. There are infinite amounts, but if you learn the basics of just making hummus at home, then you don't have to worry about trying to find a kind that has no salt or no oil, because there are brands actually that do carry low sodium, or even maybe no sodium and no oil. But the fact is that if you can learn to make a little batch of it at your home, it will go a long ways for you to have in your refrigerator. So let's just get started. Oh, and the other thing is, if we have time, we're going to make a special something. But I won't tell you about the special something because we have to see if we have time. So the very first thing that we're going to do is, I have what we call a Dutch oven, and it's heating here on the burner. I'm going to turn it up just so that the heat, I had it on very low for a very few minutes, and the pot is already starting to get hot. Now, most of you would say we're gonna always start with the onions, right? And I've small diced, really small diced. I like everything in the soup kind of small, because you can have big carrots or big pieces of celery, but I like everything in this lentil soup to kind of look uniformed. So I cut the celery and the onions and the carrots to kind of match the small size of the lentils. Not so small as the lentils, but just small diced. So I have one onion here that is small diced. You can see it right here. And it's about a cup, maybe it's a little more. It was kind of a big onion. And I have a cup of carrots that I small diced. And I also have a cup of celery. Now, in the recipe, I mentioned that you could use a cup of celery, but you can also replace the whole cup of celery with a vegetable called fennel. And we'll look at what fennel is. But I had a little bit of fennel left from a green salad that I had made. So I kind of just did a mixture here of celery and fennel. But you don't need the fennel, you can just have the celery. And then I have three, or maybe I have three probably garlic cloves that I've already chopped. So normally people would put oil into this pan, and I do want to just remind all of you that who have been coming, like Carole Kanowski and other people that have been so loyal to watching the show for over 4 years now, that there is some repetitiveness here in what we're going to talk about, but it's also just good reminder of how to do things, because sometimes some of us get off track. It even happens to me, a little bit of being off track. So reminders are really good to have, and being in a community and having a really good friend. When I was doing the transitioning, Wendy was there to support me and help me, and she was really good because I lived 10 blocks away from her, and we would share food a lot, and I would make things, and she was always helpful to say something like, well, I do this. And so being in a community is a really great thing. So
Just want to add, by the way, that saying to Carole, I do this when she's a professional chef was a little intimidating, but nonetheless, she took my suggestions well. But thanks, Carole. Somehow we've made it through, and I'm glad.
But it was really fun, right? It was really a fun thing, right? When we lived 10 blocks away from each other,
Yeah.
and sharing everything and cooking
Yeah.
together. That was a really fun thing.
Yep.
So I have a big pot, a big bowl here of broth, and I'm just going to put a little bit. If you didn't have any broth and you wanted to saute something, you would definitely put water. Water's fine. Okay, but broth is more flavorful. Now the pan is super hot. That's like boiling, and you can see the steam coming from it, right? So we're just going to put our onions in there. Now, some of you might just not understand, like, how can you do without oil? And you can, you really can, because the onions have their own natural sugar in them, actually, and those start to release. Why we need the water or why we need the broth is just to keep the onions moving, because we don't want them to stick, okay? Ultimately, we don't want the onions to stick. And we're going to cook these onions for a very few minutes, so that they become translucent, okay? And translucent means that you'll just be able to see through them. Okay, and they're just going to cook a little bit, and I'm going to lower that a little. And again, if we needed some water, sometimes I just have a little cup of water, like a measuring cup, and I'll have a water, and I'll just put a little teeny bit. You never want to drown them. You don't want to bathe them in water. You just want to have a little bit of water at the bottom. Okay, so that is cooking very well. And like I said, I have the garlic, and we are going to maybe talk about the broth for a few minutes, okay? You can buy broth in a box at the store. I encourage you to look for the vegetable broth that has no sodium. I do believe Pacific makes a brand with no sodium. And many of those broths have a lot of sodium, and many of them don't even have any flavor. I have to tell you, one time someone gave me a box and it seemed like it was all carrot juice, like carrot. It just seemed carroty. So I want to encourage all of you to learn how to make your own broth. And I'm not going to demonstrate that here, but it's something I think I talk about during almost every demo. And if you had questions, you could ask them in the chat. But basically, today, I had no vegetables in the freezer. I normally keep a Ziploc bag, a big gallon one, in the freezer. And throughout the week, when I'm cutting onions or cutting carrots or cutting tomatoes or cutting mushrooms, if I have leftover when I'm peeling the onion, peeling the carrot, I actually am putting it in the Ziploc bag and putting it in the freezer. But today I had nothing in the freezer. And so what I did was, but when I cut the celery, I put some celery in the pot, some of the ends. I peeled the carrots. I put the peels in the pot. I put the onion peels. I put the garlic peels. I even had a tomato that was really overripe, and I put the tomato in the pot. And I had a few mushrooms that were unused and needed to, they were drying out in the brown bag that I keep them in. And so I put a few mushrooms. So what I did was I have this pot. I'm just going to show you. It looks like a wok. Wendy and I have the same pot. I love it so much. But these are the cooked vegetables, and they are all scraps. And then I covered it with water, and then you just want to put a medium flame underneath it and cook it for an hour, maybe an hour and a half, until it's super, super flavorful, right? And so that's it. And for me, before I get ready to compost, this would all go into the compost. There are plenty of mushrooms in here, and there are plenty of carrot ends that I will take those out and I will chop them up, and my little doggie is going to get those in her food. So my dog is kind of the step between the leftover peeled vegetables and before they get to the compost. If anybody knows of a really good brand of boxed broth that they like, they could certainly put the name of it in a chat. It's just something that I don't ever use because I feel I already have bought the vegetables. I've already invested money in them, and I might as well get as much mileage from them as possible. So I do encourage you to make your own broth. And then I strained it through a strainer like this, a strainer, and I just press it all out, press it all. And then usually I put it in a bowl, and it's very dark and it's very beautiful. And we're going to use that in our soup. And I can use a little bit right now in this pot. So that's my little explanation on making your own fresh broth. You can freeze the broth in ice cube trays if you want, so that you always have it. You could just put it in a jar and it will last a good 3 to 4 days in the refrigerator. I always have some broth made because you want to it's so flavorful. But again, if you didn't have broth, using water is just fine. So I'm going to now put in the garlic, the 3 cloves of garlic. You could do 4, doesn't really matter. And then what I want to do is I want to start adding the carrots and the celery. And again, I told you I did a little mixture of and um, fennel and celery. And you could do all celery. Now, what is fennel? I don't have very much fennel left to show you what fennel is. This is kind of like a quarter of a fennel. It is a root vegetable, and it's a very Roman vegetable. The Greeks and the Romans ate fennel. You can eat it raw, or you can cook it, either one. And the great thing is, it's one of those vegetables that I call you get 2 things for one. I always say beets. You get the beets, and then you get the tops, and you get to cook both. The fennel is just like that too, where you eat the bulb and then you get these beautiful, beautiful fronds. And the other day I was in the store buying the fennel, and it was really funny because I was touching all the fennel and I was turning them over in their little display at the store. And a man said to me, "Are you looking for the one that has the most fronds?" And I said, "I actually am." "Smart man, you're a smart man," I said. And because sometimes the produce people cut them off because they think that they're not needed. But this is kind of the best part, is the little frowning part. And so because we're using a little bit of fennel, and again, I didn't cut this part. The fennel has a root at the bottom. I usually cut it off. And then it has a little bit of a core that I often cut off. And the stem is good for stock. If you were making a soup today, I did use a little bit of that in, and I'm just going to just literally cut this up so that it doesn't have to go back into my refrigerator, because I've been saving it for the soup and I just don't want it. And I'm just going to small dice it. But fennel, like I said, is very good cooked and is very good in a salad. And the other day I made a green salad with some sliced fennel and some radicchio, and that made it very special. Once in a while I have boring green salads, and once in a while I have very exciting salads. It depends what I have in the refrigerator. So I just cut that up, and that's going to go in there right now. And that's going to be delicious. And I actually want to cut some of these fronds. That will go in as well. I don't want to forget that I have them here. And they're not very many, because I already used them in the salad the other night. But we'll just take them off, and we'll eventually cut those. So right now we have the onion and the garlic and the carrots and the celery. Now, the next thing that's going to go in are the spices. Now, I've kept the spices in their jars. Often I kind of measure them out ahead of time. But I want to tell you what I'm doing for this soup. It's maybe a little, what would I call it? It's a little different than what you might be used to. So the spices that we need are, we need cumin, ground cumin. We need coriander, and we need smoked paprika. And I would have to say that these are basic spices. If you're starting out and you've never had spices in your cabinet, and you probably need at least 10, maybe 6 would do. But these ones I want to say are pretty basic. Just like basil or thyme is pretty basic. Um, you want to start out small. I know if you don't have a big pantry and you've never had spices in there before, but cumin and coriander and smoked paprika, I consider to be essential. And both Wendy and I probably have 60 spices, maybe more than we have. And the reason I know her number is 60 is because we organized her cabinet one day and we had to count all the jars, buy all the jars, and reorganize her cabinet. And we made it look so beautiful, everything unified. And she had so many spices.
Carol,
Now,
that cabinet is still organized, and I think of you every time I open it, which is daily, because your lettering is still there.
oh my
It's
God, it's still there. It's
still
awesome.
organized. It's
Well,
gorgeous.
something I'm going to talk about is that Wendy had way more room in her cabinet than I ever have had in my cabinet for spices. And so she has a jar of coriander whole, and then she has another jar of coriander ground, because there are different times that you want to use both things. And And coriander ground tastes, when you freshly grind it, smells like heaven, really does. So Wendy has 2 jars, one ground and one whole. And I want to show you my funny little technique of saving space. I have these seeds, and they look like this. I don't know if anybody could see them, and I put them close, but they're basically coriander seeds. Okay, and those are needed sometimes whole if you're cooking Indian food or you're cooking. There are times you need them when they're whole, but 90% of the time you need them ground. And I don't like grinding a lot of them at a time. I like grinding some at a time, but I like being able to go to my cabinet and having them ground. So I put them in a tiny little bag, and I literally push the bag into the same jar where the ground where the seeds are, and that way it's just one component. So today I say that we need 1 teaspoon of cumin, 1 teaspoon of coriander, and 1 teaspoon of paprika. But I'm only of these 2 spices, the two, what I want to call the ones that are the most flavorful, that I love the most, the cumin and the coriander. I'm going to divide the teaspoon. So instead of a teaspoon, I'm going to put a half a teaspoon. And I'm going to explain why I'm doing this. Now, if you forget to do that when you're making the recipe, it is really okay. But what I have found sometimes when you're not using salt in a recipe, and you really are maybe a little struggling of how am I going to bring up the flavor so it all feels like it is having a real strong flavor, I have found that sometimes adding a little bit of the spice at the last moment when the soup is done kind of makes it stay the spice like on the front of your palate. And it just kind of, you'll see, you don't get to taste it, but you'll see what I'm doing. So I'm actually going to put the whole teaspoon of smoked paprika in here. And I want to remind all of you, I say this often, you don't want to take your jar over to your pot where the steam is and then have any moisture get into your spices, okay? You want to keep them as dry as possible. So measure over here and then bring your spoon over there, okay? And spices can stay, if you're keeping them in a kind of dark space, they can stay for several years, honestly. So don't be afraid to buy the spices that they're going to go bad. And most people make a mistake at keeping their spices right next to their stove. And that's not a good idea because you don't want to keep them near anything that's hot. Okay, so you definitely want to keep them in a cool place. Now, the only reason you just saw me add some stock, broth is what I'm going to call it, broth, is that things were starting to stick a little bit because I'm talking to you so much and I'm not paying attention over there. Now, the cumin and the coriander, again, we need a full teaspoon, but today, right this moment, I'm going to put a half, and then I'm going to put a half a teaspoon of cumin right now. And later, I'm going to actually leave these kind of close by so that I remember that we're going to finish it off. And we're going to finish it off with a little more coriander and a little bit more cumin. And that's what we're going to do. Now I'm just going to get that stirred in there, and literally things look like this. I just want you to see what they look like. It's pretty much smelling heavenly with that full teaspoon of smoked paprika. So the vegetables are really cooking now. So we just need to do the last of the last things. Okay, let me move that. I do have one little tomato that I had for a salad, and oh, you know what? We could use that later. We'll use that later, actually. I was going to cut open a new tomato, but we'll use that later. I'm always trying to use up ends. So we have these French lentils, which are called Pew lentils, P-U-Y, and they're often called French lentils. They're a little different. They're green in color, and they are different than the brown lentils. Brown lentils are don't hold their shape. They sometimes lose their shape and they get a little mushy sometimes if you overcook them. But these little tiny green lentils, absolutely hold their shape. They're excellent for salads and they're excellent for soup. So I already rinsed them in a colander and I had them soaking in water so we would just cook the soup a little faster. And so they've been rinsed, they've been soaking in water just to speed up the cooking. And there is a little water left over, but that's fine. I'm just going to pour them into the pot here, right? Because that's just what we need. And I'm going to start condensing things here. And I don't think we need that carrot. I was going to leave that carrot out, but we'll put this stuff over here for now. And we need, the last thing we need is we need to have broth added to here, and we also need some tomatoes. So I recommend a 14-ounce can of tomatoes. You can use diced tomatoes or you could use crushed tomatoes. But a 14-ounce can is small, right? It's like a small can. And I love this brand called Bio Nature. And it's an Italian brand. And the tomatoes are so good. And they're also no salt tomatoes. And I've taken to ordering them right from the company. I used to buy them at Whole Foods. I would buy them at Fairway when I lived in New York. But I have a hard time finding them here at the stores where I live. So I've been just ordering 6 or 12 cans of right from the company. And you get a discount actually when you buy 6 cans. So, and then I just store them in a cabinet. Now that probably never could have happened when I was living in New York because I didn't have a cabinet at the time to store 6 cans of tomatoes. But it is kind of nice to have them. So because I am using a 28-ounce can, and we don't need the whole can. I'm actually going to put some of them away, okay? And I'll just use them tomorrow for something else. I'll saute some greens or I'll do something with them. But we're not going to use the whole can because we don't need the whole can. Now, you're going to see that I'm going to put my hand in this can, and I'm just going to rinse my hands to make sure they're super clean. And I use this can opener that I love, that I talk about all the time. And it's called a Fissler, Fissler, as an F like in Frank. And it's a magic can opener in the sense that it leaves no sharp edges. So if you don't have one of these kind of can openers, I almost encourage you to just buy one because it's so great. But if you're not having that kind of can opener and your edges will be sharp, I don't recommend you do what I'm getting ready to do because I don't want you to cut your hands. And I would rather you just take out the whole tomatoes here because that's what these are. These are whole tomatoes. And remember I said we don't need them all. And I'm going to take some of it out, just a little bit. I took out 2 and there's probably like maybe I'll take out 3 whole tomatoes. I would actually just I would take them and put them in a bowl and then crush them with the hand. But because I know that I have this smooth edge, I go right into the can with my hand and I just squeeze the big whole tomatoes that are here. And again, if you follow the recipe and you do buy diced or crushed tomatoes, you would not even have to do this. But because I have so many cans of tomatoes in my little cabinet, I don't bother to go buy a smaller can of tomatoes. I just use what I have. Okay, so this is all that I need, and I think that is about the right amount. If I see that it needs another 1 or 2 tomatoes, I will definitely take that out. And I'm gonna just remove this lid. And what I usually often do is I put a little broth or a little water, depending on what I'm doing, and I put it in the can. And that was 1 cup, and I swish it around so I get all the liquid out, all the tomato. So nothing goes to waste and you end up with a really clean pan inside. So we need about 8 cups of broth. And we already added just 1. Now, how do I know that I added 1? Because I have a ladle actually that actually says 1 cup on it. And this I find to be very useful because I can measure this way and I don't have to pour it into a measuring cup. I just get to measure. So that was 1. And now we're going to do 2 and we're going to do 3 and we're going to do 4. and 5. And I'm almost at the top of my pan. So we're going to do 6. And I'm going to leave, I have probably another 1 cup. I might be 1 cup short entirely. But what I want to do is I want to just get the soup started cooking. And I might just add a little more broth later. Better to add a least amount and then later on add more broth so you have the consistency that you need. Okay, so that soup is cooking now. And I'm just going to always use the lid because that helps it come to a boil. And that's going to cook now just like that. And I'm going to double check. We still need to add our grinds of black pepper. And we're going to eventually add the remaining half teaspoon of coriander and the remaining half teaspoon of cumin at the very end. Now I'm just gonna look for these fennels, and these are gonna go, I don't know, there's no fennel. Oh, and I did want to remind everyone that this is the sweetest part in the celery. You know, when you buy the stalk of celery and it has all the leaves in the center, that's the most tender, most delicious part of the celery. I love it. And I usually chop it up for tuna salad when we make it with the chickpeas. But don't throw this part out. I couldn't even surrender it to my broth today because I love it so much. So I reminded myself, I dropped it in there with the greens just to remind myself that we can put this in. It's almost like adding chopped parsley or something. It has this celery flavor, and it's so tender and so delicious. That could actually go in right now. I'm just gonna get that. I don't think I have any more in here. That's fine. And while we're having the dirty cutting board, we're just gonna put that in there. But we're gonna get the greens ready so that they're ready for the soup at the very last minute. And we still have to add some kind of acid to the soup. Now, I suggest using lemon juice, but if you didn't have lemon juice, you could use some kind of red wine vinegar, or maybe you could use apple cider. I'm not sure, but I would use. I am going to use lemon juice to kind of finish off the soup. Okay, so that's the soup, and it needs to just start reducing and cooking. And we're going to just talk about the greens that are going to go into the soup. Most times when you get lentil soup, you find it with spinach in it. That's a very common thing to put chopped spinach in your lentil soup. You can go ahead and do that. But today, I have an abundance, and I mean an abundance of kale and chard. And so we're going to skip over the spinach. And why do I have an abundance of it? Because I'm growing it in the garden that I have in my backyard. I've been growing things all summer long, and I had an entire raised bed, and I still have an entire raised bed of leafy greens. And I can't seem to keep up with it. It produces so much, and I often just give it to friends. And I say, Wendy, if you were here, I would say, here's a bouquet of greens. If you were close by, I would offer you a bouquet. And there are some,
I would love them, and I would take 3 times the amount.
right, and you would get 3 times the amount. But the thing
I'm saying
is
that
that
for the jump starters because you'll learn that we all eat tons and tons and tons of leafy greens. I'm
and
not going
also
to
what
jump
happens
into
with
it,
these big leafy greens when you bring them home is like, how do I get them in my Manhattan refrigerator? Now I
right?
know all of you are not in Manhattan, okay, but this would have been a problem for me in Manhattan. Like, and it was a problem for me. Like, how do I deal with all these greens when my refrigerator isn't quite big enough for all this? And I only, so what I suggest you do, I really do, this is a tip for you, is that when you come home from the grocery store, that you clean your vegetables, right? So you actually spend the moments and you take the kale upside down, and usually you can just pull it off of its stem, and you take it off of its stem, and you even wash it for yourself, right? So this is kind of prep work that you can do, and usually you can just pull it if you have enough strength there. And you want to not eat the stem of the kale. Sometimes I actually do chop this up and give it to the doggy. the kale stem. She can eat it if I steam it, then it's okay for her. But this is the kale, right? And then what I would do is wash this and then put it in a container, right? And if you are making salad with this container, once you rinse it, my kale's already been rinsed, but you do want to massage it. That part is super important, especially if you're not cooking it, is to massage it because it is a tough green. And by massaging it like this for your green salad, brings the poofiness of it down, and it will help make it much more tender for when you're making your salad. Okay, so we're gonna, I wanted to chop it much more, but let's just give it a few little cuts. And we're gonna put about 4 cups of greens into this soup at the very end when it's cooking. Okay, so that is, I just want you to see this. And I'm gonna actually put it in this bowl. So it's just waiting for us. And where am I gonna put this? I don't know. We're gonna put it over here. I'm always looking for ways of moving things. So this is gonna go into here. And then there's nothing more beautiful, I think, than a chard. Chard is often called rainbow chard. Sometimes it's called Swiss chard, actually, and it's not even from Switzerland. It is really an Italian vegetable. It is related to the beet, actually. Like we just talked about the beet, where you eat the root and you eat the greens. Well, this has no, you would never eat the root of chard, but it is very related. And you can see why it's related to the beet, because look how beautiful its veins are, right? I've been holding it up to the light when the window and the sun comes, and I just love it. I say, I grew this chard and I'm so very proud. So that's what I've been looking at it as more of an artistic thing than eating and then remembering that I have to eat it as a vegetable. So I'm just cutting a little bit of the red stems away. Now we're going to eat the red stems. And the way that I cut this is I just kind of pile all the leaves on top of each other. And then I fold it. And then I kind of fold it again. And I give it a roll, almost like a, what, I don't know, like a, I don't know, not like we are all rolling cigars, but it kind of ends up looking like a big fat cigar. And then I'm chopping, and I'm definitely having some of the stem. The stem you can eat, no problem, right? And I'm just cutting down the middle, and I'm cutting it so it's very shredded, because when it's in the soup, I don't want big, gigantic pieces, because I want it to be small and cut up. So now we have our greens. We probably have, I suggest 4 cups of greens. And I don't know if we have 4 cups. We probably do, maybe more. A little more is not going to hurt. And that's all ready now for our soup, okay? So now while I just rinse up for 2 seconds here, now is a very good time, Wendy. If there were any kinds of questions in the chat, the soup is going to start to boil. Now is a good time to just answer those questions.
Indeed, we're having an incredibly wonderful and lively chat,
Yeah.
all with different tips of what people themselves are doing with the green stems of either the chard or the kale. But there was one question as to whether or not you could use black lentils, and 2 or 3 people answered that yes, indeed, they love the black lentils and use them. But what do you have to say about it, Carole?
Oh my God, I love black lentils, and I love anybody that knows about them. I'm just like, high five, yay for you. They're called beluga. Beluga. I believe it's Buluga. Sometimes they're called caviar lentils because they look just like caviar, and they are little pearls instead of being flat green lentils, which these are today. They are little round, they look like caviar, and they are delicious. And I have some in my cabinet, and awesome idea.
Would you use them with this exact recipe?
I could use them with this exact recipe. They are just similar in the sense that they hold up. They hold up their shape very well, and I would absolutely use them. And congratulations to those of you in the chat who know about them and would suggest. Any other smart people that are
The whole
saying
chat
things?
is very lively with tips. In fact, Carol, who has not missed one single cooking show. Thank you, Carol, for your devotion here. Really a pleasure seeing you every
She
month.
has to listen to me repeat things. Carol
I
has to
know.
hear me
We all
repeat
repeat
the
things,
same things 100,000 times.
but we love having you. Anyway, she talks about for those of you who are freezing your soups, and Carol, I know you would agree with this. You do not add the chard or the greens into whatever it is you're freezing, but when you reheat them, you can put them at the bottom of your bowl and then pour the hot soup over them, and you still get the nutrient value of the greens and keep the soup in
I
integrity.
think that's an excellent idea. Excellent idea. And something I don't own, Wendy, but I would encourage people to get are those soup ice cube trays.
Oh,
You
right.
know those really big ones. They're
Yes.
just like ice cubes. But if you're one of those people, single person like me, or even just you're cooking for a family, and you need to make a lot of broth, you could freeze your broth in those big cubes. You could freeze portions of soup in those big ice cube trays. So I don't know the name. I can't recommend the
I think
brand at the moment.
that's somebody, Jesse, who's just been terrific also, and Brian answering things, super cubes,
She's super cubes. Yes.
SOUPR.
Yes. Just like that. And
Exactly.
they're really great. I don't own them. I should ask for that for a birthday present. People are always asking me, "What do you want? What do you want?" And I should make a list sometimes of the little things that I want. I just had a house guest come, and she brought me a microplane as a house guest, and she says, "I see you already have one." And I said, "It's something I don't need." And then she gave me something else, and I said, "I have that already." So I actually should put out there into the world, and maybe somebody would actually get me some super cubers, because it is something I don't own and I think could be useful. I
The
do. I think it could be useful. I recently showed somebody I made nice cream the other day, Wendy, and it's been forever since I used the little things. Do you remember when we would make the nice cream?
I
And we
do.
would and we would make them in the little cups.
I
I
do.
mean, oh my God, I used the little cups the other day, and I made strawberry nice cream, and with chocolate. I put chocolate pieces in it.
Oh,
Because the person I knew loved chocolate, so I made some. And these are really great by Tovolo. And I never can have enough of these ice cubes, these little ice cream, nice cream. Any kind of frozen dessert can go into this, and you have your own individual servings. But we're not talking about ice cream right now because we're leaving summer and having hot weather, and we're thinking about the fall. So, any other questions before we move to the next thing?
that's it. I think we're ready to move on.
Okay, well, we're going to make the red pepper hummus, but I have the little teeny surprise for you that it's not so much it's not even a recipe. It's something that I just want to show you how to make very quickly. And I didn't invent it yesterday. I mean, this past week, but what has happened to me this week are I've had so many experiences that I've never had in my life. I got half a case of roasted chilies that I spent hours cleaning and putting in the freezer. I went pinon picking here where I live, which is a big deal. And I went and got fresh potatoes from my friend's garden, who shared a lot of potatoes with me. So I'm really into, because I picked these potatoes, which still have dirt on them, I want to show you. And it was the most fun I've ever had, taking the shovel, pushing it down. You try not to, you don't know if you're digging into a potato. One could cut with the big shovel. And then out from the plant comes many, many potatoes. And I know that's how potatoes grow, but I've never been the person on the ground digging out the potatoes. And I've been fascinated with it all week long. And he told me not to wash them until I need to use them. So I've been just eating like 2 or 3 at a time. And I thought it'd be just fun, really quickly, like in less than 5 minutes, to show you how to cook potatoes, and not using any oil, not using any salt. And I have sliced these potatoes. And I took 3 potatoes, literally 3. And I sliced them on my mandolin, but you could do it with a sharp knife. You just want to cut them so that they're paper thin, almost so that you could see through them. And this is 3 potatoes, okay? And I had them soaking in water so ahead of time. But if you, the water soaking, it took out a little bit of the starch. They're a little bit, all the starch is sitting in the bottom of the pot actually. And I'm gonna put them in this bowl here. And they're still a little wet, okay? Not too wet. But I think what I'm gonna do, because when I've been making them, I haven't been soaking them. I only soaked them in advance because I wanted to do the cutting ahead of time. And I also did want to get a little bit of the starch out. This is only like my second or third time making. Now, many of you have air fryers. So if you're one of those people that love your air fryer, congratulations to you that you have space for an air fryer, and great that you have one, because I've witnessed them and they're a lot of fun to have. But I don't have one, and I don't desire to have one because I don't know. I like cooking in the oven, and I don't need any other machinery that I don't have room for. So we're going to get a sheet pan. I have the oven on 400 degrees. 400 degrees. I'm getting the sheet pan, and I have a piece of parchment because I never cook anything on the sheet pan without a piece of parchment, because it simply makes everything easy to clean up. So I have 3 potatoes, and I have squeezed one juice of 1 orange. Okay, 1 orange. That's all. Juice of 1 orange. Do I need it all? I don't think so. I see that I don't. And then we need to have, I'm just going to say, roughly 2 teaspoons of tamari. And I'm using 28% less sodium tamari. They now make 50% less sodium. So buy the tamari. This is Sanjay, you see, tamari. And if you're one of those people that can't have any kind of soy-related anything, you certainly can replace this with coconut aminos. So I'm going to put 2 teaspoons. I think that will be plenty for this particular batch of potatoes. And then over here, again, we are not putting any oil. We are not putting any salt. And we are going to use fresh herbs. I have rosemary that's from the garden. I have chopped it up, and I've chopped garlic up. How much garlic, how much rosemary? It is totally up to you. Right now, I have pretty much equal amounts of both things, but it doesn't matter. I even picked a few sprigs of thyme that's next to the rosemary, and I mix that into. So do what you'd like as far as those spices, okay? The soup is cooking. I just am giving it a little stir, making sure it's not boiling over. Now we're going to toss these with our hands, okay? And we're just going to make sure all the garlic and all the rosemary is distributed everywhere. And again, I have the oven preheated, and we're just going to lay these in a row. Now, I think if you have the air fryer, and someone can comment this, and that, because I don't have one and I don't really know, but I think you would have to lay things out in the air fryer too, similar to this. Again, I've only been making this particular thing the last few days because I have these wonderful, wonderful potatoes. And I think it's really a nice thing. And if a few end up on top of each other, that's okay. But ultimately, you want one layer out on the sheet pan, because you want them to brown. That's really important. And we want them, I'm going to cook them so that they're actually as crunchy as possible. And again, some of the potatoes are on top of each other, but not too many. And I'm going to drizzle this leftover marinade is really going to absorb. It's going to evaporate, not absorb. It's going to really evaporate. And it's just going to keep there. Looks really beautiful. Now we're just going to get this bowl here out of the way for a moment. And then, again, we've used the fresh garlic and the rosemary. The other day I did this, and you'll be surprised that I did this, but let me just, I have a microplane, but I also have a small, oh, let's use the microplane. I think it's better. I actually felt that a little fresh zest was nice on it because zest is something that we often use instead of salt to bring up the flavor, right? So I'm just going to use a little, and it kind of adds just a little freshness to the potato. And I'm just putting a little bit, not a lot. Now this is a very sharp tool. It's called microplane. It's valuable, so valuable to have this tool. I love it so much. And again, this is a good replacement for flavor. I eat lemon zest sometimes in the oatmeal. Sometimes I put it in rice. Sometimes I put it on my barley or the grains. It's just good for everything. So before I often crack open a lemon, I make sure that I've zested it. Now, somewhere here we have our smoked paprika. And I'm going to, you could take a sifter, but I'm just going to sprinkle a little smoked paprika. It will give the potatoes a little bit of redness, a little more, even more flavor. You don't have to do this step, but I somehow was reminded the other day when I was cooking potatoes of my mother. She used to get these potatoes in a can. I don't know why she ever bought those potatoes, but they were already cut and peeled and they were round balls. And she would always put paprika on them and make paprika potatoes. So I think it's a natural. And we're just going to put those in the very hot oven. Again, if you have an air fryer, you could make them the same way, but put them in your air fryer. So this is the potatoes. See, it takes 5 minutes and we're putting them in the oven. Now we have to move on to our hummus, but I do want to just check in with Wendy. Does anybody have any questions? We did not give the recipe for the potatoes. It's an add-on. I just felt like I was possessed at showing it to you, and we just snuck them in.
Carole, I love when you get possessed and passionate about these things, particularly having dug up the potatoes on your own. Quick question, oven temperature, and how long do you keep them in the oven?
Well, let's just see. I just put them in at, well, okay, probably at least 15 minutes is what I'm guessing, maybe 20. But they'll probably be ready just when we're getting done. We'll look at them. I did 400 degrees. 425 would be fine, actually. I just had the oven set at 400. You just want a really hot roasting oven. And honestly, I would do so many things just the way we just dressed the potatoes. I would do the same exact thing with carrots, roast carrots, roasted. You could do the same thing with cauliflower, the same thing with broccoli, even the same thing with these greens. Make a small marinade with a little bit of orange juice, a little bit of tamari, some garlic, and put a bed down on the parchment paper and then put them in a hot oven. The leafy greens you would have to definitely watch at a 400-degree oven because they'll quickly get brown and quickly want to burn. But a little teeny chard is okay. But I just want to show you that you do need some moisture. And most of people who are coming from an olive oil or coconut oil or avocado, the friend that's staying with me, she goes, well, I use avocado oil. That's really healthy. Well, no, it's not actually. Oil is oil is oil, and it's all pretty much junk. And it has no fiber, it has no nutrients, and it has full of calories. And if you can learn and teach yourself how to substitute other things, I wanted just to show you that a little bit of a marinade with the vegetables or with these potatoes, you're home free and not using any oil.
Yes, there was a question on whether or not the potatoes were raw when you started. So I'm just answering yes, they were raw.
Yes.
You sliced them very thinly with a mandolin.
Yes.
Now they're being cooked in the oven.
And let's just say you're not capable of slicing them because you just aren't good enough with a knife and you don't own a mandolin, right? Let's just say all those things are your situation. You don't own a mandolin to cut things paper thin, and you're not steady with a knife to cut things paper thin. Well, I suggest you practice to cut paper thin, but you could make some wedges, right? Cut the potato in half, cut them into wedges, and I would actually parboil those potatoes if they're going to be wedges, and I would cook them in boiling water for until they were almost tender but not falling apart. Then I would drain the potatoes if they're wedges, and because that way they're almost cooked, and basically all you're doing is putting the marinade and the spices on and putting it in the hot oven, and then you basically have wedged potatoes. That's my idea if you are not capable of having a mandolin, because that's a very special tool that most people don't own, and or you're not good at slicing paper thin things.
And another question, can you do this with a yucca potato?
Yes, of course. Any kind. You could do sweet potatoes, Wendy. We love those.
I love
You and
that.
I like love those. I mean, oh my
Yeah,
gosh. We could do it with Chef AJ's favorite Hana potato, right?
Mary,
The Hana potato. I
yeah,
can't eat a Hana potato without thinking of Chef AJ.
you're
Um,
not alone.
it's not like she introduced me to them, but she loves them so much that I can't eat one without thinking of her. And you could use sweet potatoes, and there's so many sweet potatoes are probably even better. They're way better for you than any kind of white potato. But there's also purple potatoes. There's also red, orange, yams and sweet. You could do with anything. So
For
just be
those,
creative. And
yeah,
I just wanted to encourage people to do that on their own.
right. And I'm going to just make a note for the new jump starters, not to be overwhelmed by all these choices, but sweet potatoes, or as Carol just mentioned, the Hannah potatoes, which are a very beautiful, sweet potato. So the orange ones, the purple ones, these white ones that she mentioned, they're also a really good snack, and they are a whole food. So as you're transitioning from processed foods, there's something very satisfying about the good old white potato, but we would encourage you also to use something that has more nutrient values, which is the sweet potato. And some people, particularly now as you're transitioning to whole foods, just keep them in the refrigerator as a snack at 4 o'clock in the afternoon or whenever you need it. You may have noticed Jesse also mentioned using a sweet potato, cooked sweet potato, in the ice cream, which is a dessert you might see on some of our recipe sites. So there's a lot to do with a humble potato.
Oh my
Okay.
God, I love those ideas, Wendy. I love all those. And let's just add on to potatoes that even as a single person, I often cook 6 potatoes at one time. And today, during my batch cooking, if I'm beside making my big pot of soup, I would throw 6 potatoes into the oven. Even though I'm just one person, and I'm only going to eat one today, maybe I'll have it for the snack that Wendy mentioned at 4 o'clock when I'm hungry. Or I can make a boat and put beans in it and vegetables and make a nice little bowl of a boat of out of the yam or the sweet potato. And it makes me think that we could have a whole show on just sweet potatoes, because there's so many things. You can also make hummus with the sweet potato, and you can also, there's so many endless things, and I love the idea of snacking on it. And I do want to tell you that I like cooking the sweet potato, then putting it into the freezer in the hot summer days, and then eating it like a popsicle.
Great idea.
So don't be overwhelmed, everyone. We're just giving you a lot of information right now. And it's like Wendy said, you take in a little bit at a time, and you're in a 21-day jumpstart program where you get a lot of support. And it's just good to ask questions. And believe me, I'm still learning all the time. Okay. So we're all learning. And that's why we have a community of people that eat and have the same attitude and lifestyle and want to have a healthy lifestyle of eating whole food, plant-based eating. And it's really great to know a lot of people like that. We need to move on because I need to make sure we're wrapping things up. We have the soup. It's cooking. It's not even near done, but it is cooking. I've brought in the food processor over here so that you can see everything close up. And we're going to make a hummus. Now, I might think that hummus is almost my middle name because it's something that I love so much. I don't know, maybe my culture, my background is something that I've always just eaten so much hummus. Um, I love it. Probably in the older days, I put some olive oil in it, and I probably added a lot more tahini than I do now. But I try not to. I use the tahini. It is good for us to have the tahini, but not too much of it because it's full of calories. So I have made a little recipe here, and we're going to make red pepper hummus. Okay. Now hummus is basically chickpeas and garlic, tahini, lemon juice. That is the items. Sometimes people put cumin in it. We are going to put cumin in it today. Now, can you use the canned chickpeas? You absolutely can. But I just want to show you, I have a can in my cabinet here. I just want to show you that I have these as backup emergency things. But you want to get this is from the Albertsons grocery store, my big grocery store in town. But you want to get garbanzo beans or any kind of beans, and it will say no salt added. Okay, that's very, very important because if you're just grabbing any kind of beans off the shelf, they have a lot of sodium in it. So just be very conscientious of having a couple of cans just in your pantry as backup. And I like having the chickpeas for salads, or like I just mentioned, a sweet potato boat, or we could have it on tuna, make tuna salad. Good to have backup. But I do encourage you, even though you see that I have this can of chickpeas and I buy them for $1, the best way to make hummus is ultimately from the dried chickpeas. Okay, and what do? You soak the chickpeas, you cook the chickpeas, and you get cooked chickpeas that are the same thing as in this can, but they are so much tastier when they are cooked fresh compared to the can. So I encourage you to learn how to cook them. But if it's something that you don't have time for because you have such a busy life, then rely on the canned beans. But make sure you get the no salt. And the really great thing is when you cook them, they just need water and you have no salt beans. Now, we're going to strain this. And I am going to strain this right this minute. We're going to rinse out this colander a little bit. I'm going to use the same pot as I had the potatoes soaking in because it's convenient. And I'm going to drain the chickpeas from their liquid, but I'm not throwing out that liquid. That liquid, whether it's fresh dried beans that you've made yourself, or the liquid that's in the can, is called aqua fava, and that means bean water. And this bean water is delicious on lots of things. You could use it as your stock, right? Into the pan. This could go right in. If I had no broth and this was all I had, I could use this. This could also toss. Remember, we just talked about having a marinade, toss greens or vegetables and roast them in the oven. This also could be your marinade, a little bit of this liquid. This liquid is delicious. You can also make desserts with it, but we're not going to go there right now with that idea. But I just want to tell you, don't throw it out because it's good water, okay? So we're going to get into this food processor 2 big cloves of garlic. And I like just getting the cloves of garlic started. They don't have to be totally chopped, but I like getting them started so that you don't throw everything in all at once and then you end up with a clove of garlic that's never hit the blades. This way you know the garlic is almost ground. Okay, we're going to, you're going to wonder, I say in the recipe, 15-ounce can. Okay, well, I didn't use a can. And I said, I'd rather you cook them. So if you use the can, you need 1 can. But what is a can's volume? It's about 1.5 cups. So inside every can is about 1.5 cups. So I'm going to show you that I probably have a little more than so this is 1/2 cup. So this is 1/2. This is going to be 1. And now this is going to be another 1/2 right here. Okay. So this is about what you would get in the can. Now I have just a very few left over. I could eat those as a snack. I could roast them, or I could have them for tomorrow's green salad. I think I might want them for tomorrow's green salad, actually. So I'm going to save those and just put them over there for now. Okay. And now we're going to need other things that go in here. And I have this measuring cup sitting here. This is a 3/4 cup measuring cup. You might wonder, how did she get a 3/4 cup? There is a measuring cup set that is, they call them, they're like the odd sizes. They're like 2/3 or a cup and a half. So I love this because it's 3/4 of a cup. And what we need to do is we need red peppers, right? Because we're making red pepper hummus. And I suggest that you use 3/4 of a cup of roasted red peppers. Now don't have to cook them like I did, but you can go to the store and get a jar. And you don't want the kind that are roasted red peppers in oil. You want the kind that are just in a brine. And if you buy those, they're fairly inexpensive. And you want to just drain them from their brine. You could rinse them a little bit to get off. Their brine has a little bit of salt in them. And you literally want to then measure them out just from the jar. So you don't need to do fresh roasted red peppers like me. But what did I do? I took the sheet pan. I told you I put parchment on it all the time. I cut the red peppers in half. I took their seeds and their stem out. And then I cooked them at like 400, 425. They get all burnt. You could even put it on the broiler if you want. And now what I'm doing is I'm just peeling the skins. Okay. Now I did so much of this week. I bought a half a case of Hatch chilies, and maybe we'll talk when I'm making the sandwich. What are Hatch chilies? They're the most popular chili here. There's lots of kinds of chilies here in New Mexico, but it is Hatch chili season right now. And I decided to be like, well, not quite like everyone else. Most people buy a box and they have it roasted at the store, and then they bring it home and they sit at the table. The whole family sits at the table and they peel off all the charred parts, and then they get the peppers and they put them in the freezer so that they have them until next season. Because here everybody eats chilies on everything. And so this year was the first year I decided to get a half a case. So I've been peeling. Now there is always, when you take the peppers out of the oven, the hot oven, you want to put them in a bowl and put a lid on them. Some people put them in a brown paper bag, but you just you want to steam them. And what ends up is you end up with a lot of juice. And I have too many here, but I'm just keeping peeling them. I'm just going to pile this in. And this is probably good. We'll just save those. I only need 3/4 of a cup. It's plenty. And I'm just going to give it a rough chop when I find my knife. Wendy, did you have a question? I saw you and I wasn't sure if you had a question.
Oh, sorry. Yes, sorry, that was a mistake. I was trying to answer something in the chat, but
No worries. I just wanted to make sure that you were okay and not
yes, all fine. I also just want to commend, we have a participant today, Jesse and Brian, both of you have been answering some of the questions, and the answers are everything you and I would be saying. So thank you both. They're exactly what Carole and I would be saying. And
I love that. I know one Jesse, but the Jesse I know, I think, is a man. I think.
oh, I see.
And so it's hard to know sometimes in the chat box who is a man or a woman. Doesn't matter, but there's a Jesse that comes often, and maybe it's the same Jesse. I don't know. But we're getting ready to use 2 tablespoons of
Also,
tahini.
Carole, there's one question that that I don't want to miss, which is how long do you soak the dried chickpeas before you?
Oh, well, my bean method, because I don't have an Instapot and can't cook them in 20 minutes, and I don't have a pressure cooker, again, because I lived in a small apartment and never wanted extra things that took up space, right? I actually, I soak them before I go to bed. So literally when I'm going to brush my teeth and kind of wind down my day, Oh, I think, do I have beans on the stove soaking for tomorrow? I don't cook beans every day. I try to just cook a batch of beans for the whole week, but I soak them overnight. And sometimes chickpeas can cook pretty fast. And I have been in an emergency where I haven't soaked them and I just put them in the water and I just cook them and they'll cook in an hour and a half or so. The chickpeas are pretty fast. I hope that answers the question. Going to the freezer while I'm talking to you, and I'm just getting some ice water. Okay.
There's another quick question about what do cooked chickpeas in the recipes mean, and I just want to say either it's the cooking method that Carole just mentioned. She soaks them, then cooks them for 2 hours, and cooks them before using a hummus, or you can open a can or a box of cooked chickpeas. Otherwise, chickpeas are raw, and you never want to eat raw beans.
Well,
Oh,
they're hard as a rock, and we wouldn't be able to eat them, right?
yeah, and they're
So
terrible for our stomachs. So
yeah,
only
like you have to
chickpeas.
cook them. And there's two ways. You either learn to rely on the canned kind or you learn to buy them and you learn to cook them.
Right.
Either way works. I do both methods because sometimes I'm in a hurry and I don't have time to cook them. But learn to cook them because it is more affordable to buy the dried beans than the canned beans. But if you have a generic brand like I do at the Albertsons here, that can is $1.29 for a can. Very inexpensive. Very, very inexpensive. So we put the 2 tablespoons of tahini. I just want to remind everyone when they have tahini, tahini is sesame seeds. Try to buy the kind that is just sesame seeds. There are brands that have added things. So what are one of the added things? Salt. But it's just ground sesame seeds. Okay. So that's all tahini really needs to be. It doesn't need to have any added things in it. I've been buying online. There's plenty of places in New York where you can get really good tahini. But I've been buying online this Pepperwood brand. I find it's amazingly flavorful. And I believe that they grind their sesame seeds with a stone grinder. So the flavor from this pepper, and they're organic. I like to buy the organic ones. So that is the kind of sesame tahini I'm using. I order it from Amazon, but there are plenty of places that you can buy tahini wherever, I'm sure wherever you live. But not the they're all different. They're not all the same. They're not all delicious. So just find one that you like and try to find one that just has sesame seeds. So we need 2 to 3 tablespoons of lemon juice, which I actually have here. I'm just going to remeasure. I'm going to put, I'll probably put 3 because that's what I measured out. And that's 3 right there. And then I find that ice water is really the solution to making things super smooth. Okay, but we'll add that last. So I just want to go over that we've put in what is equivalent to 1 can of chickpeas that have been drained and rinsed. I put in 3/4 cup of red peppers. I have 2 large cloves of garlic, 2 tablespoons of tahini, 2 to 3 tablespoons of lemon juice. I just used 3. Then I put a 1/2 teaspoon of cumin. Now, this red pepper hummus, I like it to have a little bit of a kick to it. So I'm suggesting that you either use a 1/2 teaspoon of red chili flakes or this brand that I have found of sriracha hot sauce, and it's called Yellowbird. And I'm going to put it up close. And I'm not sure that you will be able to find it on the East Coast, but for certain it's on Amazon or you could go directly to their site, Yellowbird, and they make a sriracha hot sauce. Now they make a variety of sriracha, different kinds. They make habanero, they make an agave. I have found this one, and you really want to make sure you want to look at the ingredients because there is one that's called agave sriracha, but agave is not that great for you. So this one has organic jalapenos, organic vinegar, organic garlic, organic dates, organic raisins, organic tangerine juice. It has a little salt in it, and it does have tangerine juice and lime juice concentrate. So really, it's pretty good. I do think that it's at Whole Foods. I haven't bought it at Whole Foods, but I'm going to use half a teaspoon. We might add a little bit more because I like it a little bit spicy. But this is a great thing to have around to give any kind of marinade, a little bit, or a sauce that you're making, just a little bit of a kick. And I'm going to put that 1 tablespoon. I'm going to put the water in now. And then we're going to look at the potatoes very fast. And I have put everything into this. And let's just make sure the potatoes are cooking. I'll show you the potatoes just to show you the potatoes because they're getting to look so pretty, but they're not quite done. And Wendy, we're almost done. We are literally almost done. And I just want to show you what the potatoes are looking like.
Wow.
But I like them really crispy. So, and they're sticking probably to the paper, but it's okay because once they get crispy, they will remove themselves from the paper. You don't have to worry that they're going to get stuck on the paper. So let's finish this. Let me see why it's plugged in, I think. Oh, you have to close the lid and now, I like pureeing it for quite a few minutes because I like it really smooth. But you can leave it a little chunky. What I would like to do at this moment is just to taste it to see how it's going. And I've put in a lot of air into it. Let's just see how it tastes. Mmm. 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 It's actually quite yummy. Mmm. I like it a little bit spicier, just a hair spicier. Not a lot spicier. Just I'm going to put a little teeny bit more sriracha, just the littlest amount. And I'm going to add a little more cumin because I want to. Okay? And we're just going to... Now, if you feel like you... I put only 2 tablespoons of tahini in it. And in the old days, I would have put a half a cup. Really, I would have. But I try not to put too much tahini in it because there's a lot of calories in it. And I do want to try to make a hummus that's not full of calories. But if you taste this and you feel like you want to have just a little more of the tahini taste, I would add 1 tablespoon at a time until you get it just to where you want it to be. Okay? But I think this is done now, pretty done. Again, I liked pureeing it so it's super smooth. And let's just, it's delicious. It's super delicious. And we're going to let's just put a little bit on a plate because we're going to make a quick little sandwich with it. And then we're going to serve everything up and we're going to wrap everything up. But we're going to make a wrap. There's a pun on words, a wrap. We're going to wrap. We're going to wrap everything up with a wrap. So we've made wraps here before in the cooking demos. And I'm going to bring over my little tray of things, little sandwich items that I'm going to put in the wrap. I have the hummus, right? And I have actually some pickled onions because I love them. I have some greens. They're actually Asian greens. They're like spicy greens. I grated some carrot. I have an open tomato that I've been having on my counter. I have an avocado if I want. If I had a cucumber, you could have red cabbage. It's kind of like putting a salad in a wrap, okay? I'm going to move some of this so that you actually can see properly. And we're going to, sometimes I make my own wraps, but for ease, I use these Ezekiel sprouted wheat, barley, beans, lentils, and millet. And they're quite delicious. Ezekiel makes delicious bread that I often have in the freezer. They even make English muffins and hot dog buns and hamburger buns and all sorts of kind of buns and breads, but it looks like this. So you want to try to get yourself a whole grain tortilla. It's not to say that you can't eat a white tortilla, but I just want you to know that there's no fiber and nutrients in a white tortilla. And you want to, if you're going to eat any kind of bread, you want to try to eat a whole grains. And this is a very good brand. So I can't do this right in front of you, but I'm going to just walk to my stove, and I have a gas burner, and I'm just going to put the tortilla over the gas. I'm going to actually get tongs, because it's gonna burn in like 1 second. And I'm just turning it over. I literally threw it on the flame, and we just want to heat it. Okay, we just want to warm it because that bag has been in the refrigerator. So I'm just, sometimes I actually get it a little burnt because I like it with a little brown edges, but I try not to burn it. So this is good enough. You see, it's still movable. You haven't, but it's warm. It's really nice and warm. Okay, so often we've spread the spread, we put all the fillings, we make it in a roll, and then we cut it however we want. But there's such a popular way of doing it now that I love doing it, that it's worth showing. So you take a scissors and you basically cut down the middle, and you just cut to the middle, right? You're just gonna cut to here, just the middle, one cut. You could do it with a knife. I just did it with the scissors because I don't have the cutting board here. And we're going to get an offset spatula, I think, if I can find one. And we're going to, on the very first part of the section, so think about it as 4 sections. And I'm just going to spread the red pepper hummus in a section. Again, right up to the quarter. So you're basically putting things in quarters, right? So here's a quarter. And then you're going to make another section. And what will we put? We'll put some lettuce. And you could put lettuce. I like the lettuce near the hummus, actually. And I'm going to put that in a section. And we do need to have the cutting board. Let me cut this tomato just over there. I'll be right back. And we could put the tomato in its own little section if we want. And you know what? I need to bring the cutting board closer by. I think it's actually better. Okay. So we'll put the tomato. We can put the tomato right now on the lettuce. I don't mind doing that. It's all in one section, right? Can everybody see that? And then we're going to put some carrots. Okay. I'm going to put carrots in another section. Again, we're making 4 sections. And then if you wanted, you could put avocado, like I said, and oh, I want pickled onions. Okay, because I always have these pickled onions. We learned how to make these this summer, and we can just mix them in with the onions. Like, we're kind of layering this. It's kind of going to be a layered sandwich. Okay, this is pretty much all we need here, but we still need to fill our last section. And remember, I just got done telling you that I peeled hundreds, maybe 100, at least 100 peppers that are called hatch chilies. And hatch chilies look just like this. And they get roasted in a big tumbler with propane gas at every grocery store, and people are buying cases and bringing them home. So I brought home like half a case, and all mine are in the freezer now, but I kept a little bit out so that I could keep eating them because I'm just loving them so much. And even though we have red pepper hummus, I would like to have a little bit of chili in it because, again, there's something about chili that is so yummy. I've been just eating it on everything lately. I really, maybe I'm losing my New Yorkness, and I'm becoming a dedicated chili fan. And okay, so I want to be able to show this to you. I'm going to just try to lift it up. We're going to lift it up, and I'm going to just show you. See how it looks? Everything has its own quadrant. And then we're going to fold. We're going to fold a corner here. We're going to fold a corner here. And then we're going to fold a corner here. Now, if you had a panini press or even a grill, it'd be great to sandwich it and make a hot sandwich. But I don't have one of those, but we're just going to make this the sandwich. Now, you probably haven't attempted to try to cut it in half, but I just take this like this. Sometimes I wrap it in parchment and it's ready to go. Okay.
Carole, it looks absolutely delicious. Really, really, really yummy. And I love the colors. I love how you've wrapped it. I've actually never seen that before. So it's
You know, it's
so
super
easy for me.
popular on TikTok,
Yep,
actually.
it's just great.
And I,
Also, I'm just going to call to those who are participating. We're at the 6:30 mark,
oh
so
my
we need
gosh.
to go. Thank you
And
very
we're
much
going to
for
finish.
joining us, but we will just wrap up in a few minutes here. And just wanted to say, if you need to leave us, totally
Wendy, we're
understandable.
going to plate every single thing and I'm just going to quickly finish. So we're
All good.
going to look at the sandwich inside and
That,
that's just going to go on the plate. Then we are going to finish. And I'm sorry, I was so concentrating
I
on the
know.
sandwich
And the
that
fluff.
I lost track of time. I literally lost track of time. We are going to, in the soup right now, we are going to finish the soup. And I have some lemon juice and we're going to put 2 tablespoons of going to get 2 tablespoons. We're going to put 2 tablespoons of lemon juice in this, right? And then we're going to put black pepper. We're going to get a little black pepper. I'm going to just get a pinch of black pepper and we're going to put that in here. I'm going to taste it. It probably needs to cook just a little longer, but I'm going to taste it for flavor. And then we're going to add the remaining parts of our special spices that we put in. Remember, we put in just half the amount. And we're going to just taste it to see how it is. And it's hot. Mm-hmm. I think the remaining, so we get the half a teaspoon right here. I'm going to put that half a teaspoon of cumin. Again, this is the remaining part into there. We're going to put our half a teaspoon of coriander. Why did I do this? Because I like it kind of, it's like it's like sitting on top in there. It's going to be mixed in, but it's not going to be as cooked in as the beginning spices that we did. And then we have our beautiful greens, and they're going to go in, and we're going to just pile them on top like this. And those are going to cook down, and they will cook down in just a very few minutes. If at some point now the soup is starting to absorb, I'm going to actually add the rest of the broth. And if you need, maybe later, you might have to add a little more water because the beans are absorbing the broth. Okay? And those greens just need to wilt and just cook for a very few minutes. And Wendy, if you need to do the demo, I mean not the demo, but if you need to do the wrap up with the messages, I will actually get the potatoes out of the oven and we'll then say goodbye to everyone.
That sounds like a great idea. So while Carole is doing this, thank you all for your extra time and patience. I will quickly run through again. Please, please, please join us. You're very welcome to join us for all the October and upcoming November, December events. But calling attention to 3 incredibly special events. One is in person with Dr. Neil Barnard in New York City this coming Saturday, October 5th. We're launching his new book, The Power Foods Revolution. He'll be there. He'll be signing books. And we would just love to have you. And Dr. Barnard is really a leader in our whole movement. Highly recommend coming that day. You won't regret it. Then online, we have a conversation with Robert Cheek, who is known as the godfather of vegan bodybuilding, and he's going to talk about building muscle on a plant-based diet. And actually, it occurs to me that those with osteoporosis is not a bad idea coming as well, because building muscle and building bone are often very related and similar. And then we have a special 3-part series on savoring health, smart eating strategies for men. And this will be conversations, this will be evidence-based education, and it will also be recipes and cooking demos. So If you can sign up for one, two, or all three, we would love to have you. And there's a special deal. If you sign up, you will be able to give a complimentary ticket to a friend to join you as well. So, and then all the other things that we're doing, please go to the website and you'll see all the other events as well. I believe that's it. I have huge thanks to Jim Spellos, as always, for producing the show, and to Alan Smithy, who helps out behind the scenes. Alan Smithy is actually David Bowles, but I think it's now okay to use his name. And then to the entire team, of course, of PPMNY. And if you need to reach us, feel free to be in contact with PPMNY on our website, sign up for our newsletter, and you can reach Carole at thevegievanguard.com, or you can see her pictures and messages on Instagram. Her address there is at the Veggie Vanguard. So I think that's it. Carole, are you ready? Are
Yes,
you
I'm ready. I'm super ready. I just want to show the technique of taking a spatula and kind of moving them off with a spatula, because they are kind of stuck sometimes, but they all free themselves. You see? And sometimes what I do is, because they are super brown already, but the other side, I like them a little bit more crisp. I'm just going to put them back in the oven for maybe 5 minutes and just get them to so that they're done and crispy. And
They look
that's
amazing.
and they're really delicious. I mean, it's hard not to eat them all, so you want to share them. Obviously, put them in a bowl, and they're delicious. And the soup is looking beautiful. It's also ready. We're not going to put it. It too needs to cook for just a little bit more, but I'm happy to just show you what it looks like as a finished product, and then we're done. And I'm so happy that you joined us. Here's the beautiful soup.
Gorgeous. I love how colorful it is, and I can only imagine how tasty with all those herbs and spices the potatoes are in that sandwich. Also, for the Jumpstart people, look at all the different colors, because that's ultimately what you want on your plate. Color, color, color of all the different foods. Yum, Carole, that looks delicious.
I have to eat it. I'm starving. And thank you for welcome back, Wendy. We're going into the fall all together, you, me, and Jim. And I want to wish everyone Lashana Tova, happy high holidays, and have a good new year. And we'll see you in October. And thank you for joining us. And we look
Our
forward to
next
seeing you
day
again.
is October 20th, if I'm not mistaken. So
Yes.
we'll see you back here in October. So thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for bearing with us a little late tonight, but hopefully well worth staying.
It's only because I have